So you say that the European Union could use the Belt and Road Initiative to help leverage the BRI's infrastructure projects to help the Eurasian continent's infrastructure. Why can't Europe just do that on their own and give money to these countries directly rather than give the money to China to then let China do whatever they want?
Okay, so I mentioned in there that $1.7 trillion on average Asian countries need. Europe can't do that by itself. It needs the support of the BRI, the economic assistance of the BRI in order to support these overland trade routes from Central Asia,
But you also
Asia
said
and China. I have several questions. So so why would it be a bad thing that the EU and the US are drifting apart? I mean, if China is growing economically, why is it a bad thing that the EU wants to get in on some of those profits, right?
Well, China inherently can't help Europe in the same way that America does, because America not only brings the economic partnerships, it also brings the military partnerships. And so because the US essentially acts as the world's police force, if the EU and America drift farther and farther apart, the US isn't inclined to help protect the EU as much as it has been in the past. So the EU is just left unprotected because China simply can't do what the US does. So back to the infrastructure stuff. You're saying that Europe leverages 60 billion and Central Asia needs 1.7 trillion. You're saying that China has about 1.7 trillion just to leverage into this situation, and then everything's solved?
Okay, we're not saying that. It's very unlikely that even with the BRI, that $1.7 trillion is going to get completely solved, because that's going to take a lot longer than both of those countries, both the EU and China have. But what we're saying is that it's better than just Europe on its own. Europe needs those Central Asian trade routes. China is connected with those Central Asian trade routes, and so they have the money, the support, and the political influence to help Europe in that regard.
How much money
So, well,
does China have?
What do you? Okay, I have a question I'd like to ask actually. So, let's think about this for a second. So you mentioned in your first contention actually, that China is starting to develop Africa, and you said that it's not necessarily a good thing. Why is third world development a bad thing?
Because the way that China does it, third world development becomes third world debt. And so when China comes in and creates infrastructure projects, they're not doing it in the best interest of the small country's infrastructure. They're doing it in the interest of having a Chinese port or a Chinese railroad in these places. So when China goes into Africa, and I mentioned Zambia and Kenya, they then have astronomical debt to China, and then China just uses that debt as leverage to hurt these countries. And so if Europe goes in and gives money to China to keep doing this and accelerate this process, then Africa is much worse off, and that's time.
How long is this?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. No way. Shoot, that's
It's actually 8 minutes.
okay. First time being second speaker. Okay, so about 2.5 minutes on their side and 1.5